Today, we are diving into something huge, the European Union's AI Act. Now, this isn't just some boring piece of regulation. We're talking about the world's first comprehensive, legally binding rulebook for artificial intelligence. And trust me, it's going to have a massive ripple effect across the entire globe.
So let's just jump right into the big question, right? This is the fundamental challenge European lawmakers were staring down. How on earth do you regulate a technology that's evolving at lightning speed? You know, something that holds so much incredible promise, but also carries some pretty significant risks. Well, the EU's answer is this complex, super ambitious piece of law.
If you look right at its core, I'm talking Article 1, the Act is basically trying to do two things at once. On one hand, it's all about building guardrails. It's about creating AI that's human-centric and trustworthy, to protect our health, our safety, and our fundamental rights. But on the other hand, it wants to boost the economy by making sure innovators, and especially smaller companies, can still grow and thrive. This tension, this balancing act, is really the key to understanding the whole thing.
Okay, so before you can even start making rules for what's allowed, you have to decide what's completely off-limits. And that's exactly where the ACTA begins. It draws some very clear red lines, identifying AI practices that are just considered an unacceptable risk to our society and our values.
So what actually got the boot? Well, for starters, government runs social scoring. Systems that rank citizens based on their behavior. That's completely forbidden. The Act also bans the untargeted scraping of our faces from the internet to build giant recognition databases. And this is a big one. It outlaws AI that's designed to manipulate our behavior or exploit vulnerable people, whether we're talking about children or any other group. And it's so important to understand why these lines were drawn. These aren't just random rules they pulled out of a hat. They are deeply connected to core European values. We're talking human dignity, freedom of thought. The whole point is to stop AI from undermining our ability to make our own choices. It's a really powerful statement about the kind of world the EU wants to protect as AI becomes more common.
All right, so once the totally unacceptable stuff is banned, the Act then turns to the things that are allowed but are still potentially pretty dangerous. And this brings us right to the heart of the regulation, the category of high-risk AI systems.
So what exactly counts as high risk? Well, think about any AI that could have a major impact on your life. We're talking about systems used in medical devices, in managing our water and electricity, AI that helps decide if you get a job or a loan, and even the tools used by police and judges. The stakes here are incredibly high, and because of that, these systems have to follow a much, much stricter set of rules.
For these high-risk systems, developers can't just cook something up and release it into the wild. No way. There's a whole journey they have to follow. They have to constantly assess the risks, use really high-quality, unbiased data to prevent discrimination, and, this is crucial, they have to build in meaningful human oversight, so a real person can always step in. It all gets wrapped up with detailed paperwork and a final conformity check, think of it like a safety inspection, before the system can ever go live.
So, this brings us right back to that core tension we mentioned at the start. How do you enforce all these strict rules for high-risk systems without totally crushing the innovation we need to build them in the first place? This is where the Act really performs its great balancing act.
And this is how it all plays out. On the transparency side, you have the right to know if you're talking to a chatbot. And things like deepfakes, they have to be labeled. But to help innovation, the Act creates these things called regulatory sandboxes. They're basically safe spaces where companies, especially startups, can test a new AI under supervision without being terrified of getting hit with massive fines. It's all about building trust through openness while still making sure new ideas can grow.
But here's the thing. This isn't just a European story. Not at all. Even though it's an EU law, its shockwaves are being felt all around the world. And you might be asking why. Well, it's because any company, anywhere on the planet that wants to sell an AI product in the massive EU market has to play by these rules. This, right here, is the key takeaway. Because the EU is the first major player to create a full legal framework. It's essentially setting the global standard. People call this the Brussels effect, where EU rules become the international norm because it's just easier for global companies to adopt one high standard for all their products everywhere.
And it's really important to remember this wasn't some sudden rush decision. Nope. This act was literally years in the making. It evolved through intense debate and compromise, all the way from an initial idea in 2021 to the final law in 2024. It was a slow, deliberate process to try and get it right.
So, this is where we end up. The EU AI Act is a monumental effort to make sure this powerful technology aligns with our human values. But will it become the gold standard that inspires responsible AI all over the world? Or will its heavy regulations end up slowing down European innovation so much that the EU gets left behind in the fierce global race for AI dominance? The answer to that is going to shape not just the future of tech, but our future as well.